Hi guys. I'll let you finish your coffees if you want to sit down, that would be great. So I'm going to be sharing some data with you today, some quite interesting data which I think a lot of you will find relevant if you're doing your business plans or you're raising funds or whatever it may be. So there's a QR code coming up later, so if you want to have a set of the slides, you can just email me and I'll send them over to you. Okay, so first set of stats. You know, the aging industry is a big part of the US economy, as you can see here, and it costs, the diseases of aging cost the US economy over $3 trillion every year. And we all know that the diseases of aging are prevalent amongst all societies, Western societies. But you can see here that there are some, obviously, massive traumatic diseases that cause trauma not only to families and individuals, but also healthcare systems. And as we all know, things are starting to move around now. We can see that people are really starting to sit up and take attention of what's happening in the longevity field. So I genuinely feel that this has moved from a movement into an industry. And in terms of that industry, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to help you understand how big that industry is today. So we all know that aging is plastic. When you look at a definition of longevity, which is something that we have attended to over a very large period of time, we've struggled with it, candidly, on occasions. Is cancer longevity? Is erectile dysfunction longevity? These are the discussions that we've all had internally to understand how we categorize. And if you're in a position where you can start to measure things, obviously measurement means that you can start to improve, but categorization of what you're measuring in the first place is really important. So we have a definition of longevity. George Church, who's going to be speaking this afternoon, has actually been working. He's a member of our advisory panel. We've been working with George to just ensure that what we're putting forward is sane. A couple of conversations we've had last night about the fact that we have done this definition is quite an important part of what we feel as our role within the industry, is to help people understand the size of the industry and how it's actually structured. So as you can see here, we have these three targets. So we're all very aware of the longevity determinants, your genetic makeup, your environment, whether you live in the center of a city or whatever it may be, and obviously on the right-hand side here, those aging diseases, of which I showed you earlier, there's plenty of those. But sitting in the middle are these aging drivers. And these aging drivers, as you can see, there are lots of phrases here that we're all very familiar with, those that understand the science. And I touch on lots of parts of the science, so I can't profess to be an expert in any of them. But of course, the hallmarks of aging are up there. There are other aging pathways. And when we are working with companies that we're helping to get funded, for example, we see a lot of companies that have got, the destination, of course, is the endpoint of cardiovascular disease or whatever it may be, but they all are working on these aging drivers. And of course, that's the most important part of this longevity industry that we're all very much part of now. So traditional thinking, treat one disease at a time. It's not efficient. It's not great in terms of you being as an individual or your family. But likewise, we're all working on the right-hand side here now to get ahead of what's happening in terms of preventing those diseases in the first place. So the aging drivers are a very key part of the fact that we see they are this new middle ground that we're all working on. And of course, they can mitigate those diseases of aging, which is what we're all wanting to achieve. But in terms of how you actually categorize those into the next phase, so we're going sort of drilling down here, we have these four pillars, as you can see. So the first one, of course, is prevention in the first place. Then there's renewal. So, of course, we're going to be talking about regeneration and reprogramming, those technologies that are very exciting at the moment. And, of course, there's treatment at the end. But sitting underneath that, of course, is diagnostics. And the diagnostic sector in longevity is becoming a very, very interesting part of the industry. And of course, you're all very familiar with different methylation technologies. There's the Clock Foundation now, which is out there. And I think that this is going to be a very important part of what's happening in terms of our agenda as an organizational structure as an industry to really make sure that clocks are a very big and important part of that. So you can see this is an example of old world thinking compared to our new world thinking. We heard from Oki yesterday from Clarity. You can see if you compare the old world and the new world as to how these new technologies are going to have such a dramatic effect to these big disease areas. You think, no more bypass, no more stents. That's the possibility of the science that we've been hearing about over these last couple of days, which I think is just fascinating. So we as an organization, we run a news channel. So we're a news and investment business. So we have recently relaunched our investment portal. That's on the right-hand side here. So you can see that this is a mouse over on Insight Tracker. But the key thing is that we're now using the data that sits within our own data set structures to report out on the companies that are active within the space, both on their science as well as their corporate and financial progress. And then we do write these reports, as you can see here. They've been a very important part of our outreach and education to the marketplace, and we're going to continue to do that, but we're going to do them on a shorter form. But the key thing of this slide is the fact that there are 25 domains that we have now categorized as longevity domains. And some of those won't come as any surprise to you, and some of them might. So you can see there's, for example, there's pet longevity up there, which actually we consider to be a very, very exciting part of the industry, and I'll talk about that in a short while. And of course, Evelyn represents clinical, which of course, again, is another important part of the industry that we really need to nurture and grow, because it's a very important enabling factor for the science that we've been hearing about over these last couple of days. So put all that together, this is what our map of the longevity industry looks like now. And those 25 segments, we've got analysis on all of them. And to give you an idea of what that looks like from a financial perspective, if you see here, those are those 25 areas segmented over a period of the last 5 years. And you can see there's some quite interesting cliffs there. On the reprogramming side, of course, you've got Altos Labs that's come in with a lot of money. So you can see that reprogramming's gone from a period of time of relative neglect to the point where it's now one of the biggest things on the agenda. And also you can see here that diagnostics is the tipping point between the sort of the bigger investment areas and then the rest. And I'm going to go through a few of those as we go through the presentation today. So I've talked a bit about us. We are a sort of three-pronged business. So we have the media platform, we have our market intelligence unit, which is looking at the data and really communicating that data out to the community, which you'll see today. And we have our investment business, where we are helping early stage businesses, which are normally seed to Series A. We're brokering introductions to them to institutional investors. So we have, on the right-hand side here, our news channel, which is very much B2B. We push out news on a daily basis during the week. And our lifestyle business, which obviously is a completely different type of publication, that's there to really build out education and engagement with the community. So our traffic's growing very fast in that area, which is great. Everybody's very interested in NMN at the moment, as you can probably all appreciate. And we see this as being a very important part of our role in the industry, is to continue through from meetings like this, where you're finding stuff that hasn't translated yet into therapeutics or into products that are available in store or online. This is where we see that this is the future. We build that community, we'll help that happen. So on the right-hand side, you can see our investment analysis business has analyzed up to date 560 companies. So those 560 companies are longevity categories. They're all sitting in those 25 domains that I showed you earlier. So every number that I'm going to show you today, I can say with confidence that the numbers will be bigger. The more companies we analyze, the numbers are going to go up. But we've capped out at 560 as it stands now, but we're obviously working on this on a daily basis. And on the right-hand side, as you can see, there's a whole list of categories of investors there. We spend a lot of time, my colleague Harry is here today, a lot of time building very deep relationships with some of the biggest funds that are out there. This is the likes of Google Ventures and Andreessen Horowitz, all the way through to very specialist longevity investors as well. And what we're doing now as a business is starting to bring those together and help the industry build and grow. So there's the QR. If you guys want the slides, I'll send them to you later. It will be coming up again further in the slide deck. So let's dive in. So interestingly, you can see here, we're in a tough year. We're in an interesting time in terms of financial markets, and I'm sure Jim Mellon, our next speaker, will be talking about that. But you can see already that 2021 was twice the size of 2020. I mean, that accelerated growth was just so exciting to see. And you can see that really on track as we stand now in 2022, that we expect the industry to continue up to exceed the 2021 figures. We're seeing a lot of deal counts coming through, so they're going to go up, and the quantums are getting bigger. And I'll show you some of those deals as we go through the presentation today. As you can see, this is analysis of last year. A lot of later stage VC was coming into the marketplace. Obviously, seed rounds, as you can see, was the biggest volume in terms of one of the biggest volumes in terms of deals. But compare that to this year, it's earlier stage VC. So there's a lot of dynamics happening in the marketplace, and a lot of it's going to track and trend traditional biotech investment and traditional tech investment. But the great news, as you've seen, is that the sector is really growing. And so $7.3 billion last year, that's not a small number, right? So VCs are very active. Interestingly, when we look at this data, individuals are not really even seen on the map. So this perception that the money coming into the industry is from Silicon Valley billionaires funding businesses is absolutely a myth. This is very, very serious investor-grade industry that we're now talking about, which I think is very, very exciting. So if you look at the growth curves of two sectors, so this is biotech and the fintech markets, which are ones that, of course, that were high growth and trending. You look at the curves associated with longevity's growth. I'm sorry to say, it is a different scale on the right-hand side, but you can see that actually the acceleration that's happening in the sector is happening fast, and we don't see that's not going to stop. That acceleration we feel is going to obviously trend what's happening in the marketplace. We can't ignore that, but this sector has now become an industry which is super exciting. So I've got 10 minutes to go through a few of the sections of the domains that I feel you guys would be interested in learning a little bit about. Some of you are going to know this stuff already, but some of you won't, so I'll do some explanation of each of those sectors and give you a breakdown of some of the key companies in there. And we're also going to explore some of the exciting areas further down on the longer tail there. So ovarian longevity, for example, which I won't be talking about today, is a prime example of a very, very exciting longevity domain, which at this stage isn't attracting the level of funding that we think it's going to, but we can see that, again, that as a trend is starting to change, and people are getting very much involved in that sector as well. So, not everything is therapeutic. So we look at technologies actually using NASA's technology readiness level score, which goes from, as you can see, 1 to 10. And we've mapped over clinical stages. So when we're looking for companies, for example, where an investor might be looking for a particular stage of company or a particular type of company, we can start to search on what their actual scientific and clinical stage is. So we use a scale of 1 to 10, and that obviously translates, as you can see, into the traditional clinical pipeline. So reprogramming is the phrase of the industry, as we all know at the moment. And as there's a lot of exciting things here, there's a lot of interesting companies doing very interesting work. Part of this is Altos Labs, and we tried to get Altos as a very early interviewee, and they said, we're not a longevity business. They didn't want to be associated with longevity. They consider themselves just to be a reprogramming business. But I think that they've got a bit of an identity crisis that will sort itself out over a period of time. But as you can see, all of these companies are still preclinical. So they're very, very early stage. But with the exception of Altos, which of course is a massive outlier, I mean, that's, it's a big slug of cash that's gone into that business. Again, there are other companies that are behind that organization that are still attracting some very significant equity investment. So then regeneration, so it's a different category. It's one of the sort of 3 R's that we have within the way we're looking at the industry. Of course, there's tissue regeneration, which is very exciting. But also there are devices, as you can see here. This is a heart that's now being used in human. On the far side there, that's Carmat. And then there's an experiment that's been taking place in Tel Aviv, I believe it is, where they've been using human heart cells to create a mini beating heart. So regeneration is one of those things using Aubrey's Model T Ford analogy to keep everybody going. And for those that want to hit it, longevity, escape velocity. But again, you can see some big capital going in here. And interestingly, when you look on the right-hand side there with frequency, they're getting way further down the line. And that's very exciting to see that these organizations not only are attracting great numbers of capital, but also they're actually making very significant progress through the commercialization pathway to being in market. Gene therapies, longevity genetics, we consider that this is really a very exciting but still early stage technology area. There's the ability to really disrupt what's going on in longevity, and I know many of you will know this, but again, you can see big capital going in. And actually what's very interesting, and again, there's this myth of big pharma not being involved in longevity. We speak to the VC arms of big pharma every week, and you can see there's been a couple of exits here already where big pharma's got involved with some of these organizations that are, obviously, they're not completely in the market yet. They're still at just in the first early stages of clinical, but they're moving very fast and moving forward. So then when you look at what's happening at the top end of the market, of course, it's great to look at the big numbers. We all like big numbers to demonstrate that we're in something that's moving in the right direction. But one of the things, not because I'm a dog owner, but the fact that we consider pet longevity to be a very, very interesting area of longevity. So I'll talk in a short while about a couple of organizations in the supplement industry. You can see that actually there's the ability for the supplements industry to segue into dog food and cat food. But of course, as a model organism, dogs live shorter lives than us, unfortunately, but they share very much the same environments as us. So in terms of being a test space for longevity therapies, not only to test them on a mammal that has the same environment as us, but actually to educate people on what's coming and available for humans, we see that pet longevity is a real bridgehead into longevity as a community. And the very interesting fact, as you can see here, that it's not our data, somebody else's data, but owners would pay $10,000 a year to avoid their dog having a life-threatening disease, which gives you an idea of the quantum. I think that's a stunning figure. So you can see here a couple of organizations. There's Eric's here from GenFlow Biosciences. We've actually put them into pet longevity as a demonstration of the fact that their clinical trials is using, as you can see, quite a pivotal trial associated with dogs. And the quantum is less, but you can see here that Loyal's attracting a lot of dollars, and we feel that this is going to be very much a growth area for longevity, and I think we do need to keep it within our community to make sure that it doesn't go out into the veterinary communities and we lose the connectivity that we've got with that. So supplements is something that I think, again, is really exciting. There are some companies, there's MitoQ, they are actually using their food supplement in breast cancer studies. So they're doing placebo-controlled breast cancer studies, and they are now moving into a therapeutic, but it's actually a supplement. So if some of you are familiar with the term GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe, these are technologies that can be therapeutic, and they can get to market super quick. And we consider that when you look at some of the evidence that's coming out of this as an industry, it's going to be a very, very big growth area. We see this as really being the very next extension of the wellness sector. But take a look at, this is the survey that we did. I think it was 271 of our readers answered these questions. And of course, you can see we all worry about dementia. We all worry about our mobility. And you can see now that there are therapies that are coming into the marketplace, but there are supplements that are actually affecting that. So Amazentis, for example, they've just published a report in Cell Aging, which demonstrated in a middle-aged cohort that their urolithin A supplement was able to avoid muscle wastage. And very excitingly, based in Dublin, we've got Ponce de Leon, Tom Meldon's here, and this is an organization that's got Rejuvant, which has got clinical data to say that, I believe it's after 7 months of taking the drug, or taking the supplement, average biological age was reduced by 8 years. And that's just using a supplement. So we see this as being a huge growth area. And then, of course, there's longevity diagnostics, which I talked about earlier. We all need to understand what our baselines are. My baseline, as you'll see in a moment, is quite an interesting one. Quite a domestic challenge for me because I'm younger than my biological age and my wife is older, chronological age, sorry. But as you can see, we break down the diagnostic sector into these three component parts. So as you can see, we've got biological age tests, health assessments, but also the very exciting area of digital health, and we'll come into digital health in just a short moment. So these are the organizations. Interestingly, Viome is one of those companies that I feel quite excited about. they've got a diagnostic, but they're also now doing highly personalized supplementation. So you get a sachet from them, a sachet a day, which then has got a completely personalized regime for you based on your tests. And they have I believe it's a blood spot test and saliva. I can't remember the details of that are. And then you've got QBio on the end there, who are doing full body MRI to create a digital twin of you, which you then have with the other people that are scanned within that community. You're building an evidence base, obviously in three-dimensional data, which again is truly fascinating. So interesting, this is me. So I'm 55. My metabolic age is 47, and my wife did the same test. This was a true diagnostic epigenetic test, and she's 55 too, but she's actually metabolically 62, which of course is a bit, domestically a little bit of a challenge for me. but the key thing is actually we have that information now as a family, as a unit. My wife doesn't exercise like I do. She thinks the amount of supplements that I take in the morning is ridiculous, as she calls it. But when you start to understand the power of this information that comes from diagnostics and how much runway you can give yourself, when I look at this, obviously if I can keep myself as low as possible for as long as possible, and really as far away from 60 as I can, where those diseases of aging really start to come in, that's a very positive thing for me. And me as a microcosm of what's possible on the scale of humankind is very fascinating. So we consider that the ability to understand diagnostics is paramount to engagement with individuals. And interestingly, we've launched a report today. I'm just going to talk about this in a short while and then introduce MG. So this is called the Way Forward for Longevity. And this is using the analysis of our team and the contribution of the humanity team to just help people understand the way forward for longevity. There's a different QR code there because we've just literally released the report today. So if you want to take a look at it, it's live on our site now. And I wanted to introduce you to Micheal Geer. He's the co-founder of Humanity. He's going to come and join me now. Hey, MG.
Hello, hello.
How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thanks for the report.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we want to... do you want to take a seat or do you want to stand up?
You'll sit there, I'll sit at the
Yeah. So, great. So the report that we put together, I'm actually I'm a humanity user myself, and your statistics have been pretty amazing, haven't they? Your numbers and your retention are very impressive for the product, which I think is a very good thing.
Yeah, I think we, well, first of all, thanks to Aubrey and Martin for having us. Awesome to see a lot of people. I used to kind of like hang out in the corner at the Buck, way past, when people wanted me to be there. If some of you know Martin, who does the Impetus grants, he'd be counting flies and I'd just be sitting in the corner asking him questions. But yeah, so, me and Pete, my co-founder, we were trying to find a way to be useful in the space, and, we're not scientists. I wanted to be an astronaut, I did aerospace. But we saw that, hey, if we wanted to do something today, we could actually go out there and, Kristen Fortenay's on our scientific advisory board, like the idea that you can use these longitudinal data sets to build these models, and working with Alexei and Peter from Geer, we could actually go out there and start just measuring people with all the caveats, like, yeah, it could be more accurate if you do this, it could be, but just actually go out today and start doing stuff. And our hypothesis, to your statement, our hypothesis was simply like, I built one of the largest dating sites. Like, if you gave people a feedback loop, so they do something, you give them a feedback loop, that should start to change their behavior, because it does all the time. Yeah. Instagram, if you post a photo on Instagram, if you don't get a like or a comment, you're not going to post another photo. We all know that, but with health, we continually ask people to do stuff, even though we tell them something to do, and then we expect 6 months later for them to still do it, even though they haven't gotten a feedback loop. And so I think just getting, as you were saying, with doing true diagnostics, just getting that score, it's meaningful to someone, right? I don't know if your wife's started to react to it yet, but like, it is meaningful. And I think the combination of the digital markers that allow for you to have a daily updated, and adding in things like true diagnostic or DNA methylation in general, I think is the way forward to actually allow people to have that feedback loop that allows us to change behavior. We now have 130,000 users, and we have a median behavior change on some of the key things of like 15%. And we think that's only going to increase when we find out not just what's going to be most impactful for your health, but what you're more likely to do as well. So combining those two things.
Yeah, and I guess from a big data perspective, the more members you have within your community, the intelligence that you can put within the predictivity of the systems as well is going to be interesting. Now, I know that Geer is part of your infrastructure, which is very interesting. But let's talk a little bit about your weekly added years, because that's a very interesting statistic that you run across your community.
Yeah. And so it's not our idea. It's obviously but the idea of having a metric that just quantifies everything that we're working for, right? And so one is having the aging clocks, as you said. Like let's start to really endorse some aging clocks and start using them more widely. But the other is just what is that metric we're trying to change? And I think as many people have said very eloquently, we're trying to add healthy years. That's what it's health span, right? And so our idea is to just, and this is a thing we show in like our all hands, every Friday, is like how many added healthy years did we add this week, right?
Right.
And so we did the acronym WAY, just to have a good acronym, but the added years weekly is the thing that we aim for. So.
And what does that look like now? What's the statistics that you've added to your population?
Yeah, so we've added already, according to using Alexi's model, with Giro and some calibrations, we've added 30,000 years.
Wow.
And so we have 130,000 users, about 50,000 active per month, and so we've added 30,000 years across that user base. And so I think that also kind of starts leading to, this is the kind of thing that can get headlines as that gets bigger, and as each of your companies pushes forward a therapeutic and it gets distributed out. Like this is the kind of thing, like we are actually changing things. This is no longer speaking of the future. This is actually real humans having more years with their family members to live life, right? So.
Yeah, fascinating. So I guess I've been in software organizations in the past. Developing a product like you're doing is challenging. You get your versions that are going out, and you get user feedback and so on. But I do notice that you do regular updates.
Especially in-person user feedback. I've gotten some great the last couple of days. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So what's on the roadmap now? I know you've been developing the products. You've been going along. Are there any big milestones coming up?
I think the biggest thing that we're working to do now is, now that we're actually seeing behavior change, we're actually seeing added years, we want to scale that, obviously. Mm-hmm. We're going to raise a Series A this year, which will allow us to do that. I think the other thing is probably, the last year is about us putting just very basic functionality into this app so that we felt like it was, something that we were semi-proud of. You're never fully, if you're fully proud, you've waited too long to release something. I think what we want to do is start integrating and interacting much more with the community again, with seeing, what else can we add both to the biological age, monitoring, but also with data sets and things like that. Had a great conversation with Didier yesterday, so I definitely want to work with him more on this data thing. I'm probably one of the people he's referring to when he talks about, talk to someone else about synthetic data and federated learning. I'm definitely a proponent of that.
And are you going to stay firmly digital? Is it going to be something where you may be introducing other types of tests, or are you just going to be using your predictive baselines based on digital outcomes?
We're very pragmatic in the sense that we want to find things that everybody can use, but we also understand that if a sample of our population of users is able to do the, say, DNA methylation testing, possibly even genotyping with polygenic risk score, like this kind of stuff we want to start layering on. And so we have a good relationship with Illumina from my time out in the Valley, and also Eurofins, which is one of those companies no one knows of until you start doing lab testing. But so we'll start doing DNA methylation, genotyping, but I'd love to add more things. And our goal is to have something that's fairly scalable, even if it might cost the user a little bit more. So if it's something that anybody in the US can use, anybody in the UK can use, anybody in Europe can use, we'd love to, start thinking about it.
Yeah, it amazes me that when you look at how much people pay for cars every year, that they apply that sort of money to, they don't apply that money to themselves. And I guess it is one of those things where we all experience the point where there's a tipping point where we're not going to commit any further. But of course, when you see what I've showed you in terms of the supplement sector and the diagnostic sector, they are very much growing and emerging. And I was going to ask you, MG, are there any particular aspects of longevity that, not relating to humanity, but your experience in the sector that you find are new and exciting? Obviously, I've shared some data today. That's exciting in itself. But what gets you out of bed when you're not thinking about humanity in the morning?
I think for me, it's always the application side. I definitely get excited watching, some of the presentations, seeing, Mike West and watching some of the stuff, which actually is on the application side now. I think like yesterday, Alexandra had just talking about, because just thinking about something that could actually be applied in the next year or two, scrubbing senescent cells out of your bloodstream, or on the kind of breath side, being able to detect these levels, because it has the two things that I love. One is you can actually measure it, right?
Yeah.
You can get your senescent cell load, and the other, you could do something right now or soon about it and see if it works, right? And because I think a lot of times we could be sitting here for the next 5 years just saying, hey, reduce your senescent cell load and it's going to make things better, but let's get a few thousand people actually doing it and see what happens, right?
Yeah, and as a Brit that speaks English, I use your app. But what's the plan in terms of internationalization? Are you scaling already internationally, or are you thinking of doing sort of Chinese language versions and things like that?
I mean, we've never done. So I did a dating site, Badoo, that was global. We did a consumer VPN, which was even much bigger. That was everywhere. Even some places the U.S. government didn't really want it to be. But I think, our plan is to try to make things global. I think some of that can come through partnerships where we can, move into different regions. But I'm a big proponent of, I want anybody on Earth that has access to the internet to be able to reach us. So we're always trying to do that. Yeah,
so this weekly added years is going to be a pretty big number over the next couple of years, I'd imagine.
Yeah, we want to get to, we state 1 billion by 2030. I think we can do even better than that. So.
Yeah, well, good luck. Well, Micheal, thanks for joining us today. Guys, the report is there. Thanks for your time, and we're here to answer questions over coffee and tea later. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.